The first
That day
gunshot
in the
sounded like a
hospital,
door slamming inside
the
his
shooting
skull,
forced me to
and
face
for a
everything
split
I hid.
second, Min thought the noise had come from his own hands, from some secret part of him that had finally decided to break. The second shot was closer, louder, and the man standing beside him folded as if someone had quietly unplugged him from the world. Blood struck the marble floor in a pattern too symmetrical to be random, and Min stared at it as though it were a test he had failed to prepare for. People screamed, but their voices came to him, warped and distant, as if the air itself had turned thick and hostile. He did not duck. He did not run. He simply watched the body twitch, watched the mouth open and close without sound, and thought, absurdly, that he had forgotten to answer the last question the man had asked him. The third shot shattered the glass doors behind them, spraying shards across the lobby of the hospital, and security guards began to shout commands that dissolved into panic. Min finally moved, but not away from danger. He knelt beside the bleeding man and pressed his palms against the wound, feeling warmth flood between his fingers. The man's eyes found his, and there was accusation there, or perhaps recognition, and Min could not tell which frightened him more. "Don't," the man tried to say, but the word broke apart in his throat. Min leaned closer, as if proximity could translate the unfinished sentence, and he whispered, "I didn't know," though he was not certain what he was confessing. Footsteps pounded across the floor, hands grabbed at his shoulders, but he resisted just enough to keep contact with the dying body. He needed the warmth to fade under his palms, so he would know this was real. He needed the proof of cooling skin. By the time the police forced him back, the blood had soaked through his sleeves. He stared at the stain spreading over the cuff of his shirt, dark and blooming, and realized it looked like a second heart beating outside his chest. He wondered if anyone else noticed how calmly he was breathing. He wondered if the shooter had seen his face before pulling the trigger. 3 hours later, Min sat in a narrow interrogation room that smelled faintly of antiseptic and stale coffee. A detective with a voice too soft for comfort slid a photograph across the metal table. It was the same man, but alive, smiling in a way that suggested he trusted whoever held the camera. "You were meeting him," the detective said. Min did not answer immediately. He studied the photo as if searching for an alternate version of events hidden in the pixels. "We were discussing a donation," Min finally replied, choosing each word like a fragile object. He did not mention the argument. He did not mention the envelope. He did not mention that the man had leaned forward and whispered, "You owe me." Just before the first shot split the air, the detective tapped the photograph with one blunt finger and asked, "Did he threaten you?" Min felt the question settle inside him like a seed. "I don't remember," he said. And it was not entirely a lie. When they released him, the sky over the city had already darkened into a bruised violet. Reporters clustered outside the hospital gates, their cameras angled like weapons, and his name began to ripple through the crowd as soon as they recognized him. He kept his head down, but the questions followed him anyway. "Dr. Min, were you the target? Did you know the shooter? Is it true the victim was suing your foundation?" Each question felt less like curiosity and more like a verdict. He slipped into the back of a car sent by the hospital board, and the door shut out the noise with an abrupt finality. For a moment, he allowed his forehead to rest against the cool glass. His reflection stared back, distorted by the city lights, and he did not recognize the man in the window. He looked older than he had that morning, as though the gunshots had stolen time from him and given it to the dead. His phone vibrated in his pocket, and he hesitated before answering. The screen displayed the name Lynn, and the sight of it tightened something in his chest. He imagined her watching the news, replaying the footage of him kneeling in blood, and he wondered what version of him she saw. He pressed the phone to his ear and said her name softly, as if testing whether it still belonged to him. "Are you hurt?" she asked immediately, her voice sharp with contained panic. He pictured her in their apartment, pacing between the kitchen and the balcony, refusing to sit. "I'm fine," he answered, and the word tasted metallic. She exhaled, but it was not relief. It was the sound of someone calculating new fears. "They're saying it might have been connected to the investigation," she continued, lowering her voice even though she was alone. Min closed his eyes and felt the car begin to move. "It's speculation," he said, and he wished he believed it. She was silent for a beat too long, and he knew she was deciding whether to ask the question she had promised herself never to ask. "Min," she said carefully, "did you tell me everything about that meeting?" He felt the air shift, heavy and expectant. "Yes," he replied, too quickly, and immediately regretted the speed of it. There are lies that hide in the content of a sentence, and there are lies that reveal themselves in its timing. He could hear her breathing on the other end, steady but strained. "Come home," she said at last. "We'll talk when you get here." The line went dead, and he was left with his reflection again, this time overlaid with the memory of blood under his hands. At home, the apartment felt smaller than usual, as if the walls had inched inward during his absence. Lynn stood in the center of the living room, arms crossed tightly over her chest, and for a moment neither of them moved. He saw the questions in her eyes, and he knew she saw the avoidance in his. She stepped forward first, reaching for his sleeves, and when she saw the dried stain, she inhaled sharply. "You were holding him," she said, not accusing yet, just confirming. He nodded. "He looked at me," Min replied, and he did not know why that detail seemed important. She led him to the bathroom, turned on the faucet, and began to scrub at the fabric as if she could erase the afternoon. The water ran pink, then red, then pale again, and he watched it spiral down the drain. "Tell me about the envelope," she said suddenly, without looking up. His pulse stuttered. "What envelope?" he asked, though he knew exactly which one she meant. She lifted her eyes to his, and the disappointment there was quieter than anger, but far more damaging. "I saw it in the footage," she said. "You were holding something before the shots. A brown envelope." He tried to reconstruct the scene in his mind, but the memory was fragmented, sliced by noise and shock. He remembered the weight of paper in his hand. He remembered the man's whisper. He remembered the first gunshot interrupting everything. "It was documents," Min said slowly. "Financial reports." Lynn's expression did not change. "From him or for him?" she pressed. He felt the room narrow again, the same suffocating compression as the interrogation room. "For him," he answered, and this time it was the truth. She released his sleeve and stepped back. "And what were they about?" she asked. He hesitated, and the silence that followed was thick enough to bruise. "About the foundation," he said finally. "About discrepancies." The word lingered between them, like smoke. Lynn closed the faucet and dried her hands methodically. "You told me those were rumors," she said, her voice almost calm. "You said the audit was clean." Min felt a surge of irritation, defensive and misplaced. "It is clean," he insisted. "There are minor issues, accounting delays, nothing illegal." Even as he spoke, he heard how rehearsed it sounded. She looked at him for a long moment, then asked, "Did he threaten to expose you?" The question landed harder than any accusation. Min opened his mouth to deny it, but the memory of the man's eyes in the lobby stopped him. He saw again the mixture of urgency and resentment there, the way the man had leaned forward and whispered, "You owe me." "He said I owed him," Min admitted, the words scraping his throat. Lynn's face tightened. "For what?" she demanded. He turned away, unable to hold her gaze. "For helping us in the beginning," he said. "For funding the first clinic. He claims we promised him influence." Lynn's silence was worse than anger. "And did you?" she asked quietly. He did not answer immediately. Promises are rarely spoken in full sentences. They hide in nods, in shared looks, in the unspoken understanding that success requires compromise. "We made arrangements," he said at last. "Nothing illegal." Lynn laughed once, short and brittle. "You keep saying that," she replied, as if legality is the only measure of damage. He felt something inside him bristle, not at her words, but at the accuracy of them. He wanted to argue, to remind her of the children treated in their clinics, the families who depended on the foundation. He wanted to frame every compromise as a necessary sacrifice. Instead, he said, "If this becomes public, everything collapses." She stared at him as if he had just confessed to something worse than financial irregularities. "You're worried about collapse," she said slowly, "and I'm worried about whether someone just died because of you." The sentence cut deeper than he expected. "I didn't pull the trigger," he snapped, more sharply than intended. "No," she agreed, her voice trembling now. "But you were there, and you were arguing, and now he's dead." The words hung between them, heavy and unresolvable. Min felt a surge of anger rise, not at her, but at the simplicity of cause and effect she implied. "You think I wanted this?" he demanded. "You think I orchestrated a shooting in a hospital lobby?" "I think you underestimate the consequences of your choices," she shot back. The accusation was not about murder. It was about years of incremental decisions, each justified in isolation, each adding weight to an invisible scale. Min ran a hand through his hair and felt exhaustion settle into his bones. "There's more," he said suddenly, surprising even himself. Lynn's expression shifted, wary. "More what?" she asked. He hesitated, aware that once spoken, the words would alter the shape of their life. "He had evidence," Min continued. "Emails, contracts, things that could implicate the board." Lynn's eyes widened. "And you?" she asked. He swallowed. "Indirectly," he said. "I signed off on adjustments, on reallocations." He avoided the word misappropriation, but it hovered nearby. Lynn sank onto the edge of the bathtub, as if her knees could no longer support her. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered. He searched for an answer that would not sound cowardly. Because it wasn't finished, he said. Because I thought I could fix it before it became a problem. She shook her head slowly. You don't fix rot by covering it, she said. You cut it out. And if cutting it out kills the patient, he countered, if exposing everything shuts down the clinics, if hundreds lose access to treatment, the argument felt familiar, like a well-worn script. Lynn looked up at him, and there was something in her gaze he had never seen before. Maybe you're not the only one who gets to decide who lives and who suffers, she said. The doorbell rang then, sharp and insistent, slicing through the tension. Both of them froze. Min felt his heart begin to pound, not from fear of violence, but from the sudden awareness that consequences were arriving faster than he could prepare for. Lynn stood slowly and walked toward the door, glancing back at him once, as if seeking permission. He nodded, though he had no idea what he was authorizing. Through the peephole, she saw 2 police officers. When she opened the door, they asked for Min, by name. He stepped forward, forcing his expression into something neutral. The taller officer held out a folder. We need you to come in tomorrow morning, he said. There are new developments. What kind of developments? Min asked, keeping his voice steady. The officer's gaze lingered on him a moment too long. The shooter was found dead, he replied. Apparent suicide. The word struck Min harder than the gunshots had. Dead? Lynn repeated, her voice barely audible. The officer nodded. Left a note, he added. Mentioned your name. The hallway seemed to tilt. Min felt the air thin around him. What did it say? He managed to ask. The officer's expression remained impassive. That he was correcting an injustice, he said, and that you would understand. Min felt his stomach twist. After the officers left, the apartment felt even smaller than before. Lynn stared at him as if trying to see through his skin. What injustice? She demanded. He shook his head, genuinely at a loss. I don't know, he said, and the uncertainty frightened him more than accusation. He retreated to the bedroom and closed the door, leaning against it as if to hold back the world. His mind raced through possibilities. Had the shooter been connected to the foundation? To the dead man? To some past decision he had dismissed as minor? He tried to recall faces from meetings, from protests, from boardrooms thick with polite hostility. His phone buzzed again, this time from an unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. There was no greeting, only breathing on the other end. You were supposed to protect him, a voice said at last, low and strained. Min's pulse spiked. Who is this? He demanded. The voice ignored the question. He trusted you, it continued. And now he's gone. Min felt anger flare, defensive and desperate. I didn't kill him, he said. The voice laughed softly, without humor. You didn't need to, it replied. You just needed to push him far enough. The line went dead. Min stood in the darkened room, phone still pressed to his ear, and felt the weight of invisible hands closing around his throat. He replayed the conversation with the dead man in the lobby, the accusation in his eyes, the unfinished sentence. Don't, he had tried to say. Don't what? Don't expose me? Don't trust them? Don't let this happen? A knock sounded on the bedroom door. Lynn's voice followed, softer now. Min, talk to me. He opened the door and saw fear etched into her features. He wanted to comfort her, to promise that everything would be contained, but the promises felt hollow even before formed. There was a call, he said. Someone blaming me. Lynn closed her eyes briefly, as if absorbing another blow. Do you? She asked. The question was not complete, but he understood it. Do you blame yourself? Do you feel responsible? Do you think this is your fault? I don't know, he admitted, and the honesty felt like a fracture spreading through his chest. He had built his life on certainty, on decisive action, and confident answers. Now uncertainty seeped into every corner of his thoughts. They sat on the edge of the bed, not touching. Outside, sirens wailed somewhere in the city, and each one sounded personal. If they have a note, Lynn said slowly, they'll dig into everything. Min nodded. The board will close ranks, he replied. They'll look for someone to blame. And you're convenient, she said. He met her gaze and saw calculation there, not cruelty. I was the public face, he acknowledged. The one on television, the one shaking hands. Lynn reached for his hand then, gripping it tightly. Then you need to decide, she said. Before they decide for you. He knew what she meant. Cooperate or resist, confess or conceal, protect the foundation or protect himself. Each option carried collateral damage. If I tell the police about the discrepancies, he said slowly, the foundation could collapse. Funding freezes. Investigations. Lynn nodded. And if you don't? She pressed. He imagined headlines linking his name to corruption, to violence, to 2 deaths in one day. He imagined donors withdrawing support. Patients turned away. I could try to negotiate, he suggested weakly. Lynn's grip tightened. With who? She asked. The board? The police? The media? He had no answer. Silence stretched between them, heavy and unresolved. Min felt as though he stood at the edge of a cliff he had not noticed forming beneath his feet. Every step backward revealed that the ground had already crumbled. I thought I was saving something, he said quietly. I thought compromise was a form of protection. Lynn looked at him with a mixture of sorrow and anger. Protection for who? She asked. He did not respond, because he did not know anymore. The silence stretched until it felt alive, breathing between them. Lynn slowly released his hand, as if contact itself had become unreliable. Min stared at the wall across from the bed, at a faint crack in the paint he had promised to fix months ago, and wondered how many small neglects had accumulated into this moment. He had always believed that collapse announced itself loudly, with sirens and headlines, but now he saw how quietly it began. You need to sleep, Lynn said eventually, though neither of them believed rest was possible. Min nodded without conviction and lay back, staring at the ceiling. The darkness did not offer comfort. It magnified every thought. The shooter's note, the unknown caller, the dead man's unfinished warning. Each detail looped endlessly, rearranging itself into new accusations. At 3 a.m, Min rose quietly and stepped onto the balcony. The city below was not asleep. It merely operated at a lower volume. Neon lights flickered against glass towers, and somewhere a motorcycle engine revved impatiently. He gripped the railing and tried to slow his breathing. He replayed the meeting from the beginning. The hospital lobby had been too public for threats, he had thought. The dead man, Hui, had insisted on meeting there precisely because it felt safe. Neutral ground, he would called it. But neutrality is an illusion when both parties carry history. Hui had arrived tense, eyes darting toward every security camera. Min had interpreted it as paranoia. Now he wondered if it had been fear. They're going to cut me out, Hui had said, without greeting. After everything I built, Min had replied carefully. You were compensated. He had laughed then, a harsh, humorless sound. Compensated, he had repeated. You think this was about money? Min had not answered. He had been focused on the envelope in his hand, on the documents proving irregular transfers tied to shell companies Hui controlled. He had come prepared to confront, not to reconcile. You signed the adjustments, Hui had said, tapping the envelope. You knew what was happening. Min had felt heat rise in his chest. I trusted your projections, he had countered. You assured the board everything was compliant. Hui's expression had shifted then, something between contempt and regret. And now you need someone to carry the weight, Hui had said quietly. You want to clean your hands. Before Min could respond, before he could decide whether to accuse or negotiate, the first gunshot had shattered the air. Min closed his eyes on the balcony and pressed his forehead against the cool metal railing. Had Hui expected violence? Had he arranged protection that failed? Or had someone else decided the argument needed a permanent solution? The possibility that the shooting had not been random coiled in his mind like a tightening spring. Behind him, the sliding door opened softly. Lynn stepped out, wrapping her arms around herself against the night air. You're not sleeping, she observed, though it was unnecessary. Min shook his head. I keep hearing it, he admitted. The shots, and what he said before. What did he say? She asked gently. Min hesitated. He said they were going to cut him out, he replied. That he built everything. Lynn leaned against the railing beside him. And was he wrong? She asked. Min felt irritation flicker again. He overstates his role, he said automatically. Lynn did not argue. She simply looked at him, and in that look he sensed doubt not about Hui, but about him. Do you think someone wanted him silenced? She asked after a moment. The question felt dangerous. Min considered dismissing it, but the image of the shooter's note returned. The note mentioned injustice, he said slowly. Maybe he believed he was correcting something, or maybe someone wanted it to look that way, Lynn replied. Min turned to her sharply. You think the suicide was staged? He asked. She shrugged faintly. I think 2 deaths in one day connected to you is not coincidence. The words were not accusatory, yet they landed with weight. Min exhaled slowly. If the board orchestrated this, he said quietly, then I'm next. Lynn's jaw tightened. Then you need leverage, she said. Real leverage. He looked at her, startled by the firmness in her tone. What are you suggesting? He asked. Lynn met his gaze without flinching. You have documents, she said. Emails. Copies. Min felt his stomach drop. I archived them, he admitted, as insurance. Lynn nodded once, as if confirming a suspicion. Then you're not as naive as you pretend, she said. He almost laughed at the bitterness in that statement. Insurance only works if you're willing to use it, he replied. If I release anything, I destroy the foundation. Lynn's expression hardened. Maybe it's already destroyed, she said. The thought unsettled him more than any threat. He had dedicated years to building the foundation's reputation, its network of clinics, its partnerships. To consider it rotten at the core felt like admitting that his life's work was compromised beyond repair. Tomorrow, Lynn continued, you go to the police. You tell them everything about the discrepancies, before someone else frames the narrative. Min shook his head slowly. If I do that without a strategy, I become the scapegoat, he argued. The board will claim I acted alone. And if you don't, she pressed, they'll still sacrifice you. The logic was relentless. Min rubbed his temples, exhaustion creeping into his bones. I need to speak to the board first, he said, to gauge their position. Lynn's eyes flashed. You think they'll be honest with you? She asked. After what happened. I need to see their faces, he replied. To know whether they're afraid or calculating. Lynn watched him carefully. And if they're both? She asked. He had no answer. The next morning, the board convened in the foundation's main conference room, a space designed to project transparency with its glass walls and open layout. Min noticed the irony immediately. The other members avoided his gaze at first, murmuring among themselves in low voices. Chairman Vin cleared his throat and gestured for Min to sit. We are in crisis, Vin began, folding his hands neatly on the table. The media is circling. Donors are anxious. Min leaned back in his chair, studying each face in turn. The police say the shooter mentioned my name, Min said without preamble. The room stilled. Vin's expression did not change. We are aware, he replied, which is why unity is essential. Unity, Min repeated, tasting the word. Does that include transparency? A few board members shifted uncomfortably. Vin's eyes narrowed slightly. Now is not the time for internal conflict, he said. Now is exactly the time, Min countered. Hui was preparing to expose financial irregularities. If that becomes public without context, we all suffer. The word all hung deliberately in the air. A woman at the far end of the table, Trang, spoke up. Are you suggesting we disclose everything? She asked. Min met her gaze. I'm suggesting we control the narrative before it controls us, he replied. Vin's fingers tapped lightly against the table. And what would that narrative be? He asked. Min felt the weight of their attention. That we discovered discrepancies, he said. That we initiated an internal investigation. That Hui's actions were unauthorized. A murmur rippled through the room. Trang leaned forward. Unauthorized by who? She asked pointedly. Min held her stare. By the board, he said. Collectively, silence followed. Vin's expression hardened. You signed off on adjustments, he said quietly. Your signature is on those documents. Min felt heat rise in his chest. At Hui's recommendation, he replied. With board awareness. Vin's gaze sharpened. Be careful, he warned softly. The threat was subtle, but unmistakable. Min understood then that unity had conditions. So that's the plan? Min asked. You isolate me? Vin spread his hands in a gesture of regret. You were operational lead, he said. It is logical the scrutiny focuses on you. Min felt something cold settle in his stomach. Logical, he repeated. Convenient. Trang's voice cut in again. This is not personal, she said. It is survival. The word echoed in Min's mind. Survival for whom? If I fall, Min said slowly, I don't fall alone. The statement was not loud, but it carried weight. Vin's eyes flickered briefly, a crack in composure. Are you threatening us? Vin asked. Min held his gaze. I'm reminding you that mutual destruction is not in anyone's interest, he replied. The room fell into tense silence. Min could feel the shift. The board now saw him not as a leader in crisis, but as a liability with leverage. Give us time, Vin said at last. We will coordinate a response. Min nodded slowly, though he sensed the decision had already been made behind his back. As he left the building, his phone vibrated again. A message from an unknown number appeared. They won't protect you. Min stopped walking, heart pounding. The message was followed by a single image attachment. He opened it reluctantly. It was a photograph of him and Hui taken months earlier at a private dinner. They were seated closely, leaning in, expressions serious. On the table between them lay a folder identical to the envelope from the hospital lobby. Min felt a surge of dread. The angle suggested the photo had been taken covertly. Someone had been watching long before the shooting. Another message followed. You owe him. And now, you owe us. Min's pulse hammered in his ears. He typed back, "What do you want?" The response came almost instantly. The truth, publicly. He stared at the screen, mind racing. Was this blackmail? Or a faction within the Foundation seeking exposure? Or someone connected to the shooter? He called the number. It rang once, then disconnected. A final message arrived. Midnight. Old clinic on Nguyen Street. Come alone. Min stood frozen on the sidewalk as traffic flowed around him. The old clinic had been the Foundation's first project, long since closed due to renovations that never materialized. Few people knew its current state. His phone rang again, this time Lin, he answered, trying to steady his voice. "The board is preparing to isolate me," he said immediately. Lin was silent for a beat. "I expected that," she replied. "There's more," he continued. "Someone wants to meet. They have photos." Lin's breathing quickened. "Don't go," she said at once. "It could be a trap." "It's already a trap," Min replied. "I just don't know who said it." "Then involve the police," she urged. Min hesitated. "If I show them the messages, it exposes the leverage I hold," he said. "It accelerates everything." "And going alone accelerates what?" she demanded. He closed his eyes briefly. "Clarity," he said. "That's not clarity," she replied sharply. "That's desperation." He knew she was right, yet the pull of the unknown meeting felt irresistible. Whoever was orchestrating this knew details too precise to ignore. "I'll be careful," he said. Lin exhaled shakily. "You keep saying that," she replied. "And people keep dying." The words lingered after the call ended. That night, as midnight approached, Min stood across the street from the abandoned clinic. The building loomed in shadow, windows dark and opaque, memories surged. Uninvited celebrations, ribbon cuttings, hopeful speeches about accessible healthcare. Now the entrance was boarded, the paint peeling. He checked his phone one last time. No new messages. He crossed the street slowly, each step deliberate. The air felt heavier near the building, as if the past itself weighed down the entrance. A single light flickered inside, visible through a crack in the boarded door. Min pushed it open cautiously and stepped into the dim interior. Dust hung thick in the air. The reception desk was overturned, chairs stacked haphazardly. At the far end of the corridor, a silhouette stood beneath a weak bulb. "You came," the figure said. Min recognized the voice. It was Trang. She stepped forward into the light, her expression unreadable. "You're either brave or foolish," she added. "Why the theatrics?" Min asked, keeping his voice steady. Trang held up her phone, displaying the same photograph he had received. "Because you needed to see how exposed you are," she replied. "Is this blackmail?" he demanded. "It's leverage," she corrected. "For both of us." Min felt confusion twist with anger. "What do you want?" he asked again. Trang studied him for a long moment. "I want the Foundation to survive," she said. "But not like this." "And what does that mean?" Min pressed. "It means someone else has been moving money beyond Hoi," she replied quietly. "Far beyond." Min's heart skipped. "Who?" he asked. Trang's gaze hardened. "Vin," she said. The name landed like another gunshot. "He's been redirecting funds through offshore channels," Trang continued. Hoi discovered it. He thought he could leverage it for more influence. He underestimated how disposable he was. Min felt the room tilt slightly. "You have proof?" he asked. Trang nodded once. "Enough to destroy him. Enough to destroy all of us." "Why tell me?" Min demanded. "Because you're already marked," she said. "And because I need someone the public trusts." Min laughed bitterly. "Trust," he repeated. "After today?" Trang stepped closer. "If you expose Vin," she said, "you can frame it as a betrayal of your trust. A corrective act." "And the Foundation?" Min asked. "It survives under new leadership," she replied. "Under you." The implications settled heavily. "You want me to lead a purge," he said. "I want you to choose whether you're a scapegoat or a reformer," Trang answered. Min felt the weight of the decision pressing in. "If I do this," he said slowly, "the board fractures. Donors panic. They'll return once the scandal feels contained," Trang replied. "People forgive corruption if someone is sacrificed." "And Vin?" Min asked. Trang's expression did not soften. "He won't go quietly," she said. "But he will go." Min's thoughts raced. Align with Trang and expose Vin, risking retaliation, or remain silent and risk being consumed. "You're sure he arranged the shooting?" Min asked. Trang's jaw tightened. "I'm sure he had motive," she replied. "Whether he pulled the strings or simply benefited, the outcome is the same." Min exhaled slowly. If we miscalculate, he said, we burn everything. Trang nodded. Yes, she said. But if we do nothing, you burn alone. The old clinic felt suffocating, heavy with past idealism turned sour. Min looked around at the crumbling walls and imagined the headlines that would follow any move he made. Give me the evidence, he said at last. Trang hesitated. Not yet, she replied. First, you commit. To what? He asked. To going public tomorrow, she said, before Vin moves against you. Min felt a familiar tightening in his chest. Every path demanded immediate action. Every delay increased risk. I need to think, he said. Trang shook her head slightly. Thinking is what got you here, she replied. The bulb above them flickered again, casting shifting shadows across her face. Min realized there was no clean exit from this building, metaphorical or literal. If I agree, he said quietly, we do it together. Trang considered him carefully. Agreed, she said. But as Min stepped back toward the door, a cold certainty crept into him. Alliances built on mutual desperation rarely hold. He paused with his hand on the warped wooden frame, listening to the hollow echo of his own breathing inside the abandoned clinic. Trang remained under the flickering bulb, her posture steady, her expression unreadable. For a brief second, he wondered whether she had orchestrated the entire sequence of events to corner him into this choice. It would not be the first time someone had mistaken his hesitation for weakness. You don't trust me, Trang said quietly, as if reading the shift in his stance. It was not phrased as a question. Min turned back toward her slowly. Trust isn't the currency here, he replied. Leverage is. Trang's lips tightened slightly. Then understand this, she said. If Vin realizes I've spoken to you, I lose whatever protection I still have. Min studied her carefully. There was fatigue beneath her composure, the kind that comes from carrying a secret too long. And if I go public and you stay silent? He asked. Trang held his gaze without blinking. Then I become collateral, she answered. And you become isolated. The symmetry of the threat was almost elegant. Min stepped fully back into the room and closed the door behind him, sealing them into the stale air again. Show me something, he said. One piece. Enough to know this isn't speculation. Trang hesitated for only a second before unlocking her phone and pulling up a folder of scanned documents. She handed it to him without ceremony. Min scrolled through wire transfer confirmations, layered through shell corporations with unfamiliar names. The sums were not minor accounting adjustments. They were strategic siphons. Dates? He asked. Trang pointed to a series of transactions. 6 months ago, 3 months ago, last week. Min felt his pulse spike at the last one. Last week? He repeated. After Hai confronted him, Trang nodded once. Hui threatened exposure. Vin accelerated extraction. Min stared at the screen, calculating implications. The amount suggested urgency, not routine mismanagement. You're certain this traces to Vin directly? Min asked. Trang gave a humorless half-smile. As certain as someone can be without a signed confession, she replied. The authorizations were routed through proxies, but the approval pattern aligns with his access windows. Min handed the phone back slowly. If we present this, he said, it becomes a criminal investigation. The foundation freezes. Trang's expression sharpened. Only temporarily, she insisted. Scandal is survivable. Complicity is not. He almost laughed at the simplicity of her confidence. You underestimate how quickly donors flee, he said. They don't wait for nuance. And you underestimate how quickly narratives can be shaped, she countered. Min ran a hand across his face. He felt older than he had that morning, as though each revelation carved another line into him. What about the shooter? He asked abruptly. How does he fit? Trang's gaze darkened. I don't know, she admitted. But I do know this. The note naming you diverts scrutiny from the board. Or from you, Min said quietly. She did not flinch. If I wanted you destroyed, she replied, I wouldn't be standing here. The statement was logical, but logic had lost its comforting clarity. Min stepped closer, lowering his voice. If I do this, he said, you don't disappear after the first press conference. Trang's jaw tightened. I won't, she said. He studied her one last time, searching for hesitation. All he saw was resolve layered over exhaustion. Tomorrow morning, he said finally. Before the police interrogation. Trang nodded. I'll prepare the documentation package. Min opened the door again, stepping into the cooler night air. The city felt different now, not because it had changed, but because he had. As he crossed the street, he felt the weight of an invisible countdown. His phone buzzed as soon as he reached his car. A message from Vin. We need to talk. Urgent. Tonight. Min stared at the text, a bitter smile forming despite himself. Of course, Vin sensed movement. Power often detects instability before it becomes visible. He typed back, "Where?" The reply came quickly. "My office." 30 minutes. Min hesitated. He had just agreed to confront Vin publicly, yet here was an opportunity to gauge him privately. He dialed Lin instead. "He wants to meet," Min said as soon as she answered. "Tonight." Lin's silence stretched for several seconds. "And you're going," she said, not asking. "Yes," he replied. "You're walking into the center of it," she warned. "I need to see whether he knows," Min said. "About Trang, about the evidence. And if he does?" Lin pressed. "Then I'll know how desperate he is," Min replied. There was a tremor in her breathing. "I don't like that every path you choose leads deeper," she said quietly. "Neither do I," he admitted. When Min entered Vin's office, the lights were dimmer than usual. The city skyline behind the glass wall glittered indifferently. Vin stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back. "You're busy tonight," Vin observed without turning around. "So are you," Min replied evenly. Vin turned slowly, his expression measured. "I received information," he said, "that you've been contacted." Min kept his face neutral. "Contacted about what?" he asked. Vin studied him carefully. "About Hui," he said. "About documents." Min felt his pulse quicken, but kept his voice steady. "People are talking," he replied. "That's inevitable." Vin walked toward his desk and sat down deliberately. "You must understand something," he said. "When institutions face attack, unity is survival. Unity seems selective," Min replied. Vin's gaze sharpened. "Are you suggesting disloyalty?" he asked. "I'm suggesting transparency," Min countered. Vin leaned back in his chair. "Let me be clear," he said. "If you attempt to distance yourself publicly, you will stand alone." Min felt the underlying threat settle heavily. "And if I don't?" he asked. "Then we weather this together," Vin replied smoothly. The offer felt hollow. "Together means what?" Min pressed. "You accept responsibility?" Vin's eyes hardened. "Responsibility for what?" he asked coolly. "For the transfers," Min said quietly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "You're treading dangerous ground," Vin said softly. "Am I wrong?" Min asked. Vin stood abruptly. "Be very careful about repeating unverified allegations," he warned. "Especially when your own signature is on questionable authorizations." Min felt anger flare. "At your instruction," he said. Vin's expression did not change. "Prove it," he replied. The challenge hung in the air. Min realized then that Vin believed he held the stronger position. Either he did not know about Trang's evidence, or he assumed Min lacked the courage to use it. "You called me here to threaten me," Min said flatly. "I called you here to remind you," Vin corrected, "that impulsive decisions destroy more than reputations." Min stepped closer to the desk. "Did you order he silenced?" he asked quietly. Vin's reaction was subtle but visible. A tightening of the jaw, a flicker in the eyes. "That is an outrageous accusation," Vin said evenly. "Is it?" Min replied. Vin walked around the desk until they stood face to face. "You are grieving," he said in a low voice. "You are under pressure. Do not let paranoia dictate your actions. And do not mistake restraint for weakness," Min replied. The tension between them was thick, almost tangible. "If you go public with internal matters," Vin said slowly, "the foundation collapses. Clinics close. Patients suffer." The argument was familiar, almost identical to Min's own reasoning from hours earlier. Hearing it from Vin's mouth stripped it of moral clarity. "You're concerned about patients?" Min asked quietly. "I'm concerned about stability," Vin replied. "Stability for who?" Min countered. For the first time, Vin did not answer immediately. Min felt something shift inside him. The silence confirmed more than denial would have. "You should sleep," Vin said at last. "Tomorrow will be long." The dismissal was deliberate. Min left the office with his thoughts in turmoil. As the elevator descended, he realized there was no longer any neutral ground. The board had chosen containment. Trang had chosen exposure, and he stood between them, holding fragments of truth that could ignite either path. When he returned home, Lin was waiting in the living room, lights dimmed. She searched his face the moment he entered. "He knows something," Min said quietly, "but not everything." "And you?" she asked. "I know enough," he replied. She approached him slowly. "Are you going through with it?" she asked. Min hesitated only briefly. "Yes," he said. Lin closed her eyes for a moment, as if bracing for impact. "Then understand this," she said softly. "Once you step forward, you don't control how far you fall. I don't think I ever did, he replied. They did not sleep. Morning arrived with the sterile brightness of inevitability. Reporters had already gathered outside the Foundation's headquarters. The police awaited Min for questioning. Instead of heading directly to the interrogation, Min stopped at a small conference room adjacent to the lobby. Trang was already inside, a folder in front of her. You're certain? She asked. No, he replied honestly, but certainty hasn't protected anyone. She slid the folder toward him. Inside were printed records, cross-referenced and annotated. The evidence was not circumstantial. It was methodical. Once this is handed over, Trang said, there is no retracting it. Min nodded slowly. We hand it to the police first, he said. Then we prepare a statement. Trang watched him carefully. You're changing the sequence, she observed. I'm avoiding spectacle, he replied. She seemed to consider the adjustment, then nodded. As they exited the room together, cameras flashed. The narrative was already forming, even before words were spoken. Inside the interrogation room, the detective from the previous night sat waiting. He looked up as Min entered, noticing Trang at his side. We have additional information, Min said before the detective could begin. The detective's eyebrows lifted slightly. Regarding? He asked. Financial misconduct within the Foundation, Min replied evenly. Potentially linked to motive. Trang placed the folder on the table. The detective's expression shifted from routine professionalism to sharp focus. You're implicating someone specific? He asked. Min met his gaze. Yes, he said. As the detective opened the folder, Min felt the last illusion of control slip away. Whatever happened next would not be reversible. He thought of Vin's calm threat, of the unknown caller, of Hai's unfinished warning. The detective flipped through the documents, eyes scanning quickly. This is substantial, he murmured. Min nodded. And you're prepared for the consequences? The detective asked quietly. Min did not hesitate this time. No, he said. But that's no longer the question. Outside the room, phones buzzed and whispers spread. Inside, the balance of power shifted in ways none of them could fully predict. The detective closed the folder slowly, his fingers resting on the edge as though measuring its weight. We will need full access to your internal servers, he said. His tone was neutral, but there was an undercurrent of escalation. Min nodded without hesitation. You'll have it, he replied. Trang remained silent beside him, her posture controlled. Min could feel her tension even without looking. She had crossed her own line by stepping into that room. There was no safe retreat for either of them now. Be aware, the detective continued, that once this is formalized, all board members become subjects of inquiry, including you. Min met his gaze steadily. Understood, he said. The detective studied him for a moment longer, as if trying to decide whether this was courage or self-destruction. You're aware that the shooter's note referenced you directly, he added. If financial motive intersects with personal grievance, your exposure increases. I'm aware, Min replied. He felt strangely calm now, as if the act of disclosure had anesthetized some of the fear. That calm unsettled him. It felt artificial, like the quiet before a structural collapse. When they stepped out of the interrogation room, the hallway was thick with tension. A junior staff member avoided eye contact as she hurried past. Min recognized the look in her eyes, confusion laced with betrayal. News travels faster than facts, and loyalty erodes in the space between. His phone vibrated in his pocket. Dozens of missed calls, messages stacking in real time. One from Vin stood out. You made a mistake. Ming did not respond. Instead, he walked toward the main lobby, where cameras were already assembling. Reporters shifted the moment they saw him, microphones rising like a synchronized movement. Dr. Min, are you cooperating with authorities? Someone shouted. Is it true you implicated Chairman Vin? Another voice pressed. Min paused at the entrance, aware that every word would calcify into headlines. Trang stood a step behind him, silent. I have provided information relevant to the investigation, Min said evenly. The Foundation will cooperate fully. Are you accusing your own board? A reporter demanded. Min held steady. I am committed to transparency, he replied. It was not a denial, and it was not a full confirmation. It was enough. As they moved past the crowd, he felt the weight of collective scrutiny settle into his spine. This was no longer an internal crisis. It was public fracture. In the car, Trang finally exhaled. You didn't say his name, she observed. Not yet, Min replied. She studied him. You're calculating, she said quietly. I'm surviving, he corrected. His phone rang again. This time, he answered. Lin's voice came through, strained but steady. It's everywhere, she said. They're speculating about a power struggle. There is one, Min replied. Vin just held a press conference, she continued. He said he welcomes the investigation. He implied financial oversight was delegated. Min felt a slow, cold understanding settle in. Delegated to me, he said. He didn't say your name, Lin replied. But he didn't need to. Min closed his eyes briefly. Vin was not panicking. He was counterframing. Come home, Lin said softly. I can't yet, Min replied. There's more to stabilize. Stabilize what? She asked. He had no clean answer. By late afternoon, the boardroom was no longer a place of strategic planning, but of defensive positioning. Some members had already distanced themselves publicly. Others remained silent, waiting to see which direction momentum favored. Trang entered first. Min followed. The air was brittle. You acted unilaterally, Vin said without preamble. His tone was controlled, but the tightness around his mouth betrayed anger. I acted to protect the Foundation, Min replied. By turning us over to authorities? Another board member snapped. By turning over evidence of misconduct, Min corrected. Vin stood slowly. You've destabilized donor confidence, he said. Clinics are calling for reassurance. Then reassure them with truth, Min replied. A low murmur spread across the table. Truth is not simple, Vin said sharply. Complexity destroys trust. Secrecy destroys it faster, Min countered. The exchange was no longer about documents. It was about narrative control. Min could see the fracture forming, some board members wavering, others aligning instinctively with power. You think you can step into leadership after this? Vin asked, voice low. Min did not respond immediately. He understood the trap. Claim ambition and appear opportunistic. Deny it and surrender leverage. I think leadership requires accountability, he said finally. Vin's eyes hardened. Be careful what you wish to inherit, he replied. The meeting dissolved into competing arguments. Min recognized the moment when collective strategy became personal survival. It was subtle, almost invisible. Eyes shifted. Allegiances recalibrated. When he left the room, he knew the internal war had begun. That evening, Lin stood by the kitchen counter, scrolling through news updates. Her face was pale. They're linking you to the shooter more aggressively, she said. Anonymous sources suggesting you had motive to silence Hai. Min felt exhaustion seep into his bones. That's deliberate, he said. From Vin? She asked. From someone, he replied. She set the phone down slowly. Do you ever regret starting this foundation? She asked suddenly. The question struck him harder than any accusation that day. No, he answered instinctively. Then he paused. I regret believing I could control every compromise. Lin stepped closer. You're not in control now, she said quietly. I know, he replied. They stood in silence, the space between them carrying unspoken fears. Lin reached for his hand, but there was hesitation in the gesture. Min felt it. You're afraid of me, he said softly. She looked up quickly. I'm afraid for you, she corrected. That's not the same, he replied. Her jaw tightened. I don't know what you're capable of anymore, she admitted. The words were not cruel. They were fragile. Min felt something inside him crack slightly. I haven't changed, he said. That's what scares me, she whispered. He did not know how to respond. Later that night, another message arrived from the unknown number. You chose exposure. Now choose sacrifice. Min stared at the words, pulse accelerating. He typed back, Who are you? The reply came slower this time. Someone who lost more than funding. The implication lingered. The shooter's family? A former patient? A donor? Meet again, the message continued. Alone. Min showed the screen to Lin, her face drained of color. This isn't about money, she said. No, Min agreed. It's about grievance. You can't keep walking into traps, she said urgently. If I don't, they escalate, he replied. You don't know that, she argued. I know pressure patterns, he said quietly. This isn't random. He felt the weight of expectation settle again. Every choice now carried immediate human consequence. The next morning, the detective called. We've traced the shooter's background, he said. He had a sister treated at one of your clinics. Treatment discontinued after funding cuts. Min's breath caught. Which clinic? He asked. The old Wen Street facility, the detective replied. The room seemed to tilt. The sister died 2 months ago, the detective continued. He filed complaints, received no response. Min felt a wave of nausea rise. The old clinic had been closed under his operational review. Cost efficiency, resource redistribution, words that now felt grotesque. Was Hoy involved? Min asked. We're still investigating, the detective replied. But your name appears in administrative correspondence. Min ended the call slowly. Lin was watching him from across the room. It was the old clinic, he said quietly. Her treatment stopped. Lynn closed her eyes. He blamed you, she said. He was right to. Min replied. The admission hung between them, heavy and undeniable. You couldn't fund every facility, she said carefully. I chose which to close, he replied. I signed the letter. The realization did not absolve him. It sharpened the guilt. So this isn't only about corruption, Lynn said softly. It's about consequence. Min nodded once. His phone buzzed again. A new message. Now you understand. Min felt cold. Whoever this is, Lynn said, they're inside your decisions. He nodded. They want you to feel it, she added. He already did. As the investigation deepened, financial audits expanded, and Vin's influence began to erode. Yet with every external gain, Min felt internal erosion. He stood one evening in the empty boardroom, lights off, city flickering beyond the glass. He thought about the sister he had never met, about the letter he had signed, about the chain reaction that followed. Transparency had not cleansed him. It had exposed layers he could no longer compartmentalize. His phone buzzed again. One last meeting, the unknown number read. Then, I disappear. Min stared at the message, aware that disappearance rarely meant peace. He typed back a single word. Where? The response arrived. Hospital lobby. Min felt his pulse hammer. Full circle. He slipped the phone into his pocket and turned toward the door. The hallway outside the boardroom was dim, the building largely emptied for the night. His footsteps echoed more loudly than they should have, each step sounding like an accusation following him. He did not tell Lynn where he was going. He told himself it was to protect her from further fear, but beneath that justification was something less noble. He did not want her to see the expression on his face if this confrontation broke something irreversible inside him. The hospital lobby was quieter than it had been the day of the shooting, but the memory of that violence clung to the marble floors like a stain invisible to everyone else. The security guard at the entrance recognized him and gave a hesitant nod. Min returned it automatically. Aware of how many eyes lingered a second too long now, whenever he entered a room, he stood near the exact spot where Hu had fallen. He did not kneel this time. He simply stood, hands clasped loosely in front of him, waiting. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. At 20, he considered the possibility that this was another manipulation, another attempt to unbalance him emotionally. He was about to turn away when he noticed a woman seated near the far wall, partially obscured by a column. She rose slowly and walked toward him. She was younger than he expected. Mid-20s, perhaps. Her face was composed, but there was a tightness around her mouth that suggested discipline rather than calm. She stopped a few feet from him. You came, she said. He studied her carefully. You've been messaging me, he replied. Yes. There was no hesitation, no attempt at anonymity now. You're his sister, Min said quietly. Her jaw tightened, but she did not look away. Yes. The air between them felt charged, but not with violence. With reckoning. I thought you might not recognize me, she said. I've seen your file, Min replied. Your appeals. A faint, humorless smile touched her lips. After the fact, she said. He did not deny it. You closed the clinic, she continued. You signed the letter. I did, he answered. She searched his face for something defensiveness, perhaps, or indifference. My brother believed in that place, she said. He thought it saved her. He thought it saved me. Min felt a tightening in his chest. I believed it was necessary to consolidate resources, he said. The explanation sounded hollow even to him. She deteriorated 3 weeks after treatment stopped, the woman said evenly. 3 weeks. The number settled heavily. I'm sorry, Min said. She studied him, and for a moment he thought she might laugh. Instead, she said, Do you know how many times officials have told me that? Min did not answer. My brother filed complaints, she continued. He thought if someone higher up saw the numbers, saw the data, they would reconsider. I saw them, Min said quietly. And? She pressed. And I chose to proceed, he admitted. The admission did not feel like absolution. It felt like exposure. Her eyes glistened slightly, though her voice remained steady. He didn't plan to kill anyone, she said. He planned to confront you. Min felt a cold realization settle. You're saying the shooting wasn't meant to happen? He asked. She shook her head. He brought the gun because he believed power only listens to threat, she said. He thought if you were afraid, you might reverse the closure. Min's throat tightened. And the gun went off? He asked carefully. He panicked, she said. Security moved too quickly. Hui grabbed his arm. It escalated. The narrative he had constructed in his mind began to fracture. He left a note, Min said slowly. She nodded once. After. He wrote it in the holding cell, she said. Before he ended it. Ming felt his pulse in his temples. He blamed himself, she said. But he blamed you too. That's fair, Min replied. She stared at him, surprised by the lack of resistance. I don't need you to confess publicly for my sake, she said. I needed you to understand. Understand what? He asked. That decisions made in conference rooms don't disappear when budgets balance, she said. They echo. He swallowed. I exposed corruption, he said quietly. It will change how the foundation operates. Will it reopen the clinic? She asked. He hesitated. That's what I thought, she replied. The silence that followed was heavier than any accusation she could have thrown at him. I can't promise what I don't control, he said. You controlled it once, she answered. The statement landed cleanly. He felt the urge to defend himself, to explain structural constraints, donor pressures, operational logistics. Instead, he said, if the foundation survives this, I will prioritize restoring services there. She studied him carefully. Is that guilt talking? She asked. Or strategy? He considered the question longer than she expected. I don't know anymore, he admitted. That seemed to disarm her more than a confident answer would have. I sent the messages because I wanted you to feel cornered, she said. The way he felt. I did, Min replied. She nodded once, as if that completed something for her. I won't contact you again, she said. There's nothing left to demand. She turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, she added without facing him, he didn't hate you. He hated what you represented. Min stood alone in the lobby long after she exited. He replayed her words, not as accusation, but as diagnosis. What you represented. He thought of the early days of the foundation, when he had spoken about accessibility and dignity. He had believed efficiency was a form of compassion. Now, he saw how easily that belief hardened into detachment. His phone buzzed. It was the detective. We've confirmed the sequence, the detective said. The shooter acted alone. No evidence of board involvement. Min closed his eyes briefly. And Vin? He asked. Financial charges are proceeding, the detective replied. He's retained counsel. Min nodded slowly, though the detective could not see him. You understand, the detective added, that your administrative decisions will be reviewed as well. I expect that, Min said. When he returned home, Lin was awake, sitting at the dining table. She looked up as he entered. You saw her, she said quietly. Yes. And? She didn't come for revenge, he replied. She came for acknowledgement. Lin studied him carefully. Did you give it? She asked. I tried, he said. She stood and approached him slowly. And what did it cost you? She asked. He thought about that. It cost me the illusion that exposing corruption was enough, he said. She nodded once. The following weeks unfolded with controlled chaos. Vin resigned under investigation. Trang stepped into interim leadership temporarily, though she made it clear publicly that governance would be restructured. Donors hesitated, then cautiously returned when new oversight mechanisms were announced. Min declined the role of permanent chairman when it was offered. Trang confronted him in private. You earned this position, she said. I'm not sure I deserve it, he replied. She frowned. Leadership isn't about deserving, she said. It's about capacity. I have capacity, he replied. What I lack is clarity. She studied him for a moment, then nodded reluctantly. The old clinic on Nguyen Street reopened 6 months later under a pilot program funded by emergency reserves and new conditional grants. It was smaller, more modest. Min attended the reopening but did not give the keynote speech. He stood in the back, watching families enter cautiously. He spotted the woman from the hospital lobby across the courtyard. She did not approach him. She simply met his gaze once, then looked away. That felt appropriate. The investigation into his administrative conduct concluded without criminal charges, but with formal censure. The report stated that his decisions, while legally defensible, demonstrated insufficient ethical impact assessment. He read that sentence several times. Insufficient ethical impact assessment. It sounded clinical, precise, detached. He kept a printed copy of it in his desk. One evening, months after the shooting, Min stood alone in the reopened clinic, lights dimmed, listening to the distant hum of equipment. He ran his fingers along the edge of a newly installed desk. He thought about Hui, about the shooter, about Vin, about himself. He understood now that corruption was not always greed. Sometimes it was convenience layered over justification. Lin joined him quietly. You're thinking again, she said. Yes, he replied. About what? About scale, he said. How easily we trade individuals for systems. She moved closer, resting her hand lightly against his arm. "You can't carry every outcome personally," she said. "I already did," he replied. She watched him carefully. "Are you at peace?" she asked. He considered the question honestly. "No," he said. She nodded. "Good," she replied softly. He looked at her, surprised. "If you were," she continued, "I'd worry you'd stopped listening." He let that settle. Outside, traffic moved steadily past the clinic. Inside, machines hummed. Lives intersected quietly. Min understood something now that he hadn't before. Redemption was not a single act of exposure or reform. It was a constant negotiation between intention and consequence, and he did not trust himself to ever navigate it without error again. But perhaps that was the point. He did not turn off the lights immediately when they left that night. He let the clinic glow a little longer in the dark, not as penance, not as absolution, as reminder